And we are live with Brad Hanna again. Second quarter 2024 podcast.
It's St. Patrick's Day.
It's fucking St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah, but we're doing it early. I wish I had some religious thing to say, but I have no idea who St. Patrick was. I know about the snakes.
I know that it feeds his spirit when I drink as many beers as I did at lunch today.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's all about.
Maybe you're the St. Patrick's of drywall, right? Just come with your fiddle and get rid of the fucking snakes.
Get rid of the snakes. Coming for the snakes. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So it was good to see you again.
Yeah, what's up? Working? You're going out to BC soon?
Yeah, BC's gonna be dope.
When are you going?
I just bought my ticket for the 29th. So I'll fly in Friday night and then
March?
yeah.
I don't know why I thought you were going in February. I was about to send you. I was gonna send you a text message February 26th and just be like, hey man, go, all the best, wishing you good luck. And then I was waiting to see you, and then I was like, oh yeah, no, I must have had the fucking month wrong or some shit.
No, we did. So it was going to be January. We just got so excited about it,
Yeah.
right? So we're like, yeah, in a perfect world, everybody could fucking get it done by January 1st. And then I think February 23rd was the second. And then we just pushed it a month. Like
Yeah.
it was like it's Ish's house, right? It's
Yeah.
not going to kill him, he says, to have it set an extra week or two. So
Yeah.
just have it done 100% in April 1st.
That's gonna be wild, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty cool.
That's gonna be super wild. And is it all Columbia like users?
Mhm.
Are they all ambassadors or have been at some point?
Not Chad and Cam's guy he works with, Wes, is coming.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I like pretty much.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Where's the project, Surrey?
Yeah.
Not so awesome, but that's okay. Lost your drive isn't the nice part.
The
Okay.
nice part. He was very clear about that. He's like, because I kept calling it the Surrey project. He's like, you gotta call it the South Surrey project. And I was like, what do you?
Who said that?
The customer.
Oh, okay. You gotta call it the Surrey. That's like West Hamilton, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The nice part, near the hospital. That's too funny.
Yeah, dude, it's been pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
It's your skateboarding's getting pretty dope, man.
Yes. It's I thought we were talking about it's just like I like doing things that you're not that great at. It's that like I think I've always had that problem, man. Even when I was young, it's like right when I got good at something, I like want to go and do something else. It's kind of like detrimental, I think, in a way. But then with taping, anyways, is like I've always said to you, like I'll tell you, I'm only thing I'm really good at, like really, really good at is taping. Everything else I'm like half-ass. It doesn't matter. It could be as just something as simple as being a good person.
Yeah.
I'm not, um, but eventually, like you get happy. I think you find peace in what you're doing, in your coats, and the quality you're putting out, and it's still there, but it becomes like how many in a row can I do mint?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then it's just ridiculous at that point, and it's not there. So something like skateboarding, I'm gonna be 40 this year, so I get to be more active. I'm using muscles I haven't.
Right.
But I always sucked. Like because I was afraid. When I was a kid, I was like really apprehensive about shit like that. Like I didn't want to fall, right? And so like I'm almost 40. You're gonna be 40 in a few years. You've fallen a bunch.
Oh yeah.
Oh, have I? It's not that bad, right? And I think when you're young, the kids that were young and were willing to fall, figuratively speaking, or in a physical sense in skateboarding, life was a bit easier for them, let's say, or they knew more of what to expect. So now approaching something like skateboarding, and when I'm 40 and I've learned all of those lessons, it's it's more satisfying because I already know the outcome. If I just concentrate on these 5 micro movements and I commit myself, skateboarding is like everything. You have to lean in naturally with anything. When you're near a cliff, you want to lean back, or when you slip on a banana peel, you want to lean back to try. Is skateboarding, you have to lean in.
Yeah.
Right. Life, you got to lean in. Auto tools, you need to lean into them, right? Everything. So I already learned all these. So it's been really fun to like, and I need to take a lot of breaks, right? So it's been really fun to like bail or like eat it and then sit back and have like a smoke or whatever, or coffee, and be like, okay, I'm gonna do it this way, that way. And like that's, that I think that's what's been like giving me that satisfaction that I was missing in auto tools. But thanks, man. Yeah, like you got to be responsible with anything, whether you're skateboarding or whether you're going to the gym. I think now, as we're getting older, with your physical health and your mental health, obviously, you got to be really responsible because as we get older, our shit breaks down. Like, the big thing with doing my stuff, which is basically cardio, skateboarding, that like when I was younger, I could always land
Yeah.
straight stiff-legged and I'd be okay. And now I've noticed as I get older, even if you're just doing cardio, if you or you're jumping down your two-step, if you're not absorbing it with your knee and you're landing stiff, like that can screw your whole day up,
Yeah.
right? Whereas when you're a kid, your bones are a lot more
Just
flexible.
rubber. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it helps in that aspect too, right? And just getting out, man, and doing something other than work. Like
Yeah.
it will be the death of you, work. Yeah. So thanks. I'm having fun with it. But work is starting soon and I gotta stop because you can't,
Yeah.
one wrong, you gotta be responsible with it. And one wrong move, it doesn't matter. You could play competitive basketball and tear an ACL, or you could
Yeah.
fucking zip around in a bowl. It doesn't matter what you're doing at this age. You got to be doing something, and you got to be responsible, I think.
So I'm getting back into the gym and I'm never gonna lift super heavy again
Yeah.
because it's like for what, right? I don't want to.
Did you try and kind of hurt yourself?
No, no,
too?
no.
No?
But I could feel it though.
Yeah.
Like but just getting started, you're gonna feel a certain way anyways. But
Yeah.
it's just that if I fuck my shoulder up, then like now you're just not working,
Yeah.
right? So it's just stupid.
You
But
can push through it, but it sucks.
look, that's what I mean. And what if you
Sucks.
do real damage? Like you tear something because you're trying to fucking
Yeah.
PR or some shit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the ego comes out of it when you got kids and you got to be
Yeah, dude.
responsible. Like
Hungry people.
I'm not gonna do some shit until I can like I know in wait,
Progression is different. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? But even being a hero, like,
Yeah.
dude, I'm never gonna hit like vert, like transition vert. I'm never gonna do it. I tried it.
Yeah.
I tried it like a week ago and I landed on my
Get your
fucking
ass
back.
fucking
Oh my
pucker up.
God, dude. Like, and I was so confident. It would be the same thing if you're at the gym and you're gonna start adding more weight
Yep.
on. A long story short, 3 days, I'm like killing it. I'm like riding the skating transition, which is for me is the hard, like it's not the hardest, but it's the sketchiest
Yeah.
because you have to constantly be shifting your body weight. And if you don't, you're gonna fucking eat it and you're done, right? You're done. But the coolest thing, man, about transition skating, you're gonna so when you're walking down the street, like the horizon's always like this, right? And
Yeah.
I've never transition skated till last week. When you're on the pole, like if you've transition skated, this is probably super boring to you, but I never realized this, dude. When you're on the pole, the whole world is, you know what I'm saying? For like those few seconds, it's a really weird feeling, man. The whole world, the whole horizon tilts to the curvature you are on the bowl. And I could hang with it until I got to vert. And so vert, like the half pipe comes up to a perfectly
Yeah.
vertical. So the bowls and like we don't build shit with vert on it. It's all bowls. There's not really any vert. But when I failed, obviously. That's where the story is leading. But when
Yeah.
you're riding vert, like the whole world is on its side, and you just have to like know where to lean, where to look. It's a point of references, like with auto
You're
tools.
kind of floating
It's
at that
gnarly,
point.
dude, and like you're so not used to it. Like
Jeez.
I was never a hardcore skater, just to predicate. Like I was just a dude. I like ripped around pop shop kit, whatever. But so to me, this is mind blowing,
Yeah.
right? And I love it. But anyways, long story short, I'm like, I feel really comfortable in the balls. I like stall up on the top, come back in, fake it, like I'm getting it. So I go to this park and they have vert there. And I'm like, I do this wall ride over this like sewer thing, and I'm like super cocky coming up to the big gnarly bowl. It has about like 2.5 feet of vert. The bowl is like 6 feet and it has like a solid 2.5 feet of vert. So I come down my regular stance. I'm fine. Drop into the bowl. Never done a 6 foot drop before, but this is a scooter park, essentially. So the flat part
Okay.
in between this part of the bowl and that part, your flat part, it's like 4 feet. And that's the amount of time you have to register in your brain that I have to totally switch my whole body weight to this way, right?
Oh, because yeah.
Because I've come in this way, you come in this way. You have no time to compute it, and I'm not an expert. Long story short, I come up on the vert. So just imagine this is the vert. My body comes up like this. Now I'm on the vert, and the whole world is on a 90-degree angle. And I've never been in this, my body has never been in this position in 40 years.
Yeah,
I do
yeah.
not know what I'm doing at this point.
Recently.
Yeah, man, like 6, 7 days ago, I panic. I
Yeah.
panic. I don't know what I did. And I panic. I must have leaned back. Board flies out from underneath. This all happens in a millisecond.
Yeah.
Board flies out. So now my whole body is like this. This is my back, 6 feet in the air,
Yeah. Dude.
and bam, right on my back, dude. Couldn't breathe, man, for like a minute. I'm sitting there like crawl out of the pool. No one's around, thank God, right? Crawl out of the pool. Oh my God. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna ledge skate for the next few months. Um,
This is it. I'm gonna die fucking skateboarding.
but I mean, I love it. I don't know. This is the podcast about skateboarding that nobody asked for.
Yeah.
Hey, but that's a lot like the tools, isn't it? Like
It is.
I remember one time I ran out of mud and you were on that job. It was an osteopath clinic.
Oh yeah.
Ran out of mud, machine mud, and we had like 6 boxes of yellow left. And I was using yellow for taping, but I never knew. I was just doing it because I was told to do it. I saw it on the internet. Fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I'm like, shit, it's like the weekend. We can't get whatever. Fuck it. I'll just do the last 2 coats with yellow, man. Oh boy. Oh yeah, I learned my lesson that time. My pieceworker's work was better than ours, and he sucked. I was like, oh my God. I ended up recoating the whole thing. It was the same thing, right? Like you learn. Sometimes it's the best way. It's just to be a cocky SOB and land on your back 6 feet on a vert to know that you are probably, and it was probably not a good idea that it was raining that day too.
Yeah.
A good idea to try and drop in on a 6 foot pole for the first time in the
But
rain.
you would have felt like an absolute samurai if you had landed that in the rain.
I think that the universe was telling me something like, hey,
Yeah.
if you landed this, you would have just kept going. You would have got a helmet and pads, and something horrendous would happen to you
Yeah.
because, man, I'm telling you, when I'm doing like 25 on the skateboard, I feel like I'm going 100.
Oh,
Like I went down this hill. That was the scariest shit I ever did in my life. I will never do that again. I'm so glad I recorded it so I can show my grandkids. Look, I was gnarly.
yeah, do this shit all the time, actually.
Man, that's so scary. Yo, once you hit like on my board, anyways, once you hit like 25K, it starts fucking board starts wobbling, like board wobble, right?
Yeah.
Because my trucks are so loose, it's like the board starts like, oh man, it's a hoot. If you can land and on your feet, anyways, and laugh about it.
Yeah.
Like I landed it once and had to jump off the other. It's hilarious, but well, yeah, when you can't land, it sucks. But anyways, like I'm digressing big time. I think that that shit is super important as we get older, along with the mental health stuff. Like
100%.
I don't know, you tell me the way that I deal with that, because everyone has mental health things that they need to spend time on, whether it's just having time to yourself, whatever, chilling out, seeing your kids, whatever it gives you peace, reading the Bible. Hey,
Yeah.
slide that in there. But for me, it's about balance. Like taping's taping, or slinging board. It can be seasonal if you're new construction. Sometimes you got to run. Like you get a lineup of 3 nice houses, you got to go, man. You're going to work 7 days a week. Do it. You got to do it. But you still, for me, my personal experience, I need to take time away to decompress from it because it's a hard job and it can be tricky and very technical at times. And if I do that, then I'm always on my A game and I don't get pissed at people, get down on myself,
Hmm.
feel like I'm like like I feel like I'm not being a good father, whatever. It's all about that. And in our business, especially, it's so easy to lose sight of it because, like we were saying at lunch, it's one of those things where you want to go out and make big bananas.
Yeah.
You can do it. So that,
Just sacrifice.
yeah, well, that's what I do, man. What do you do?
I was like drowning in that kind of shit for a long time. And eventually I kind of came to terms with I'm just going to be super honest with everybody. And if that means fuck you, unfortunately, that at least you know.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't want to like play games with people. Your emotions, I absolutely feel for them.
Yeah.
Right. But they're not more important than mine.
Yeah.
And like sleeping at night is a big part of that. And then the other aspect of it was just that little voice of like, did you work hard today? Right. If I don't ring that bell,
Yeah.
it almost immediately your mental health plummets.
Yeah, you might have a little pity party
Yeah.
for 5 or 10 minutes, but that's 5 or 10 minutes too many.
Yeah.
Oh, I did. I thought I was the only one that had that one. I didn't really. Yeah, I have that one big time.
The bell ring.
Well, I mean, in a sense, like you know me, like I like work like really like worked too much and missed out on a lot of things
Yeah.
for a few years. So I'm playing with house money. Like I took a step back. I still work. Everyone has to work. Yeah, right.
Hmm.
I take a step back to I need some time for myself and to get my shit straightened out. And then so then when it's like I came back into it about 2 years ago now, and yeah, that was a struggle because I was used to going 7 days a week, 12 hours a day till the project was done. And then is like in the first little while, it's like shit. Everyone's like my clients and people are not they're used to me being an alien from another planet who's like obsesses over getting the job done.
Hmm.
And the reality of it is I just didn't want to be there. Near the end, I would work like fucking every day till the job was done. Didn't matter if it was 2,000 bird feet or 20,000 because I really didn't want to be there. It was just my time is the most valuable taping, unfortunately, for me, whether it's a blessing or a curse.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, so coming back, that's like a good point that you made. I think in taping, it's pretty explanatory though. Like we all have our own process, and we all know that if you don't finish that one process for that day, you've just lost a day.
Yeah.
So whether it's tape, you like, if say you like to pre-fill and tape your flats, whatever the hell it is, you got to get it done in that day. So then that's how I started to be. It's like I don't need to be RoboCop,
Hmm.
or the Terminator. I can just be just like the next guy, man. I get my process done and I can still maintain my quality. And it also comes with, uh, for me, I had to understand the value of money, which I've spoke. It's not the end all be all.
Yeah.
Experiences,
Hmm.
just sitting in your backyard on a fucking Wednesday at 2 p.m. and watching the birds
Yeah.
is priceless. And people who are so caught up in business or golden handcuffs, or I need the next car, I need the next fucking pair of shoes, the next phone, the next this, the next that. You're not going to remember. Who remembers the iPhone 7? Because I don't. I know the 14.
Yeah.
I don't know the 7.
Yeah.
But I remember that time that you and I got all fucked up on New Year's and we were blowing off firecrackers that I got from a variety store I taped, and they
Yeah.
were throwing them out, and we found out that they were default, and you would light them, and instead of going 30 feet in the air, they would go 3 feet away from us. Like I remember that shit. You know what I'm saying? I remember that shit. Reps was there. Um, and just to predicate, I mean, I know I speak for Sean, we're not mental health experts by
No,
any
definitely
means.
not.
And I think that's a big reason why people like I like to every once in a while drop something in a story and be like, hey man, it gets better, or there's someone out there. Because I know out of all the people who watch the shit, there's at least one person who needed to hear that day
Yep.
because enough people watch it. And so I feel good about it without championing something that I really don't know that much about.
No, and I think it's everybody's struggle, right? And everybody struggles differently, and everybody has different like mechanisms to
And
deal
you don't
with
know how
shit.
you could say the wrong thing if you're trying to
I
like
think,
I'm not a therapist, man. I don't know.
yeah.
Like
Yeah, for me to say like I if I just work and then feel like I worked good, my mental health is better. Like that's not gonna fucking work for anybody else. They're
yeah.
gonna be like, this sucks, and I feel like shit.
Yeah, and that's where like
But it's where to
speaking.
get my purpose from,
Yeah.
right? Like that's what I feel like if I'm putting in a hard day's work or whatever. But that's not the same for everybody.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the way you deal with it, the way that Joe Blow deals with it. It's all
I had that at one time, but I had goal. Like I had a particular financial and personal goal that I
Mhm.
wanted to achieve. And I was like so tired from working because I worked my ass off since I was 16 that I just wanted to get it over with.
Yeah.
And so that's why I did that. And I achieved it. I mean, it wasn't exactly how I pictured it to be. I learned a lot about myself and shit, and it came at a horrible cost. And if I would go back in time to do it again, would I do it differently? I'd say I would, but like I wouldn't. Like, fucking I wouldn't. And it's just balance, man. Like when you run it in drywall, like you run like an ass, it will catch up with you. It might take 3 or 4 years. It's going to catch up with you. It
Yeah.
probably won't be in a monetary sense. It's impossible. If you work so much, you don't have time to spend your money.
Yeah.
And if all you're doing is working in this business, you play your cards right, you're making pretty good money, right? And if you just bank it or invest it in something solid, you're going to be okay. You just do that. It's just pounding at the rock. We're not Bitcoin dudes.
No,
We're not fucking day traders. We're not over here. This is like you have to either use your mouth or your hands in this business to make money. Those
absolutely.
things aren't moving, you're not making money.
Hmm.
And yeah, and then the balance comes into place. That's what makes it sustainable. But again, we're not experts on any of this thing. And I don't think that anybody should try and, to be quite honest with you, champion it.
Hmm.
I certainly wouldn't. I've thought about talking about those things more than like once every 3 months dropping something there.
Yeah.
Hopefully someone reads it and it helps them. But like at the end of the day, we don't want to identify with that because I don't. We've all been in dark places, especially if you've been a sole proprietor in drywall. You've had some dark fucking nights, man, when no one understands you,
Yeah.
right? You're
Yeah.
coming in closer to God in a tight situation only. Like we've all been there, you know. How many times have you prayed? You know what I'm saying? Like that. Oh man, I've been there. But it's just all how you deal with it, and I'm no expert and I can't identify with that. I mean, you know what my remedy was. Everyone has a different one, you
Hmm.
know. I started reading the Bible, it was the Coles Notes version of it, and everything made sense for me, so
Yeah.
it's good for me. It's not going to work for everybody. You know what I mean? It's not going to work for everybody. Going to the gym might work for you. It's just something other than thinking about work,
Yeah.
how much money people owe you, how much money you owe people, what's going to happen in 3 months. I think the
Kind of
best thing,
be distraction from that.
well, in full circle, back to like what you said, like sometimes I feel like I'm not pounding that rock.
Yeah.
But a lot of times it's out of your control. Like there's only so much to do on a taping job at some days, right? And so instead of running out to the next one or hey, I gotta like fucking network with somebody else, it's
Yeah.
like this is a perfect opportunity to go through my closet and sort my shit out. Man, my closet's been so sad for years. Like, what's the use of having nice spaces and nice
Hmm.
shit if you can't even use the nice shit? And
When you said not for everybody, or everybody's different, whatever you said there, we talked about, I asked you how you ran your box, like how you hold your handles, and you said something great where you were like body type, finisher type, like that's having that conversation is so ridiculous.
yeah, yeah, like I'm skinny. Like I'm 6'3" and I weigh like if I'm working and eating, I probably weigh like a buck 70. But
Yeah.
like right now, I haven't worked
We
in
got 100
like
pounds more than,
I haven't worked in 2 months, so I'm
yeah.
probably like a buck 60.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm tall and thin, so where my power comes is all leverage based. And so
Right.
any female who runs automatic tools would get their, let's call it power,
Yeah.
in the same manner that I would get my power. I've watched you run the box. Your technique is more like your technique is not leverage. Your technique is like raw power.
Yeah.
And that's great. That's your asset. You have big ass shoulders and big biceps. I
Yeah.
would do the same thing. In a sense, that's kind of good because as long as you can learn to really statue up, once you start
Yeah.
running, statue up yourself and keep it tight, man, because you have that strength, you'll be able to run it super straight. Because as you know, you're not pushing hard on the wall
Right.
to get the mud out of the fucking box. You're pushing hard on the wall to keep the box tight, square, running down straight on the box. That's why you see I lean into it. I don't really push. It's all my 160 pounds. Like
Yeah.
I used to take shit when I made videos like 6 years ago. Why are you pushing so hard? It's like, man, I'm using a split gasket, homie. Like I gotta do this. and it's all a technique. But the one thing that's similar, is like um that I like we were talking about is sight lines, and
Yeah.
that's how like getting crisp and straight and like literally running the tools and thinking about nothing other than like shit, I was really mean to Sean last year. I gotta get in touch with him. This is what goes through my mind when I'm running flat. Like I'm not, because it becomes that point, and we should have a smoke before we like go and do.
Yeah, all right. We'll be back to talk about black boxes. And we are back.
This segment is brought to you by North Star Taping Tools.
He's holding a Columbia box there, and it's fine.
So we're talking about like, hey, the whole you say tomato, I say tomato, holding the box. And for me, like I was saying, everybody gets the mud out of the box a different way. And that I think is not universal. But when it comes to running your box straight or consistent, you can even run it off the line consistent and you're going to be better, in my opinion. Because, like I always say to you, when these are jigs, and when a jig is a perfectly jig coat is laid, it's 100% consistent. And then when a jig bigger than that jig is put perfectly over top, not like the ocean or like you're like, boogie night, like you get this perfectly consistent coat that is so predictable to sand, you don't even have to think about what you're doing.
Right.
And so the way that I do that, the way I get the power out of the box is just through leverage because I'm a skinnier dude. You would most likely be using your power,
Yeah.
you're pushing it out, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, like what's most important for me is I crouch down. I look like a little samurai because all I'm doing is my eye needs to be level with the nut. So I'll crouch down. So I'm looking at the nut and I line the nut up with the top of the bevel on the top sheet. We're doing a horizontal right now. And I get into this trance in this zone where all I am concerned with, I look to make sure my path's clear, I'm not going to trip on anything because I can't look where I'm walking. And I'm just fixated. My eye is looking at this nut, directly at the nut, lining it up with the bevel that's coming. In my peripheral of that eye, I'm looking at where I've came from. And in my left eye, I'm looking at where I'm going to, all at the same time. And just trying to maintain that and making the super minute adjustments with my hand-eye coordination to keep on that line. And then when I step back and look, the run's straight. It doesn't matter if it's 10 feet or 100 feet. It's always straight.
Yeah.
Because I'm just using it's like a stencil. And the same goes with like we were talking about with Noco, you know, and you say you're using a 5.5 inch box. Well, I'll take a specklet of mud that's just ran on the box that lines up perfectly with that bottom piece of the paper of the no coat. I'll get into that trance, fixate myself on that and run down it. That's why ceilings are the easiest to keep straight because you have and that's why I love doing them with a long pole because when it comes to running tools straight, the farther away you are, the easier it is to keep straight. It's like when you're doing anything, you're a framer.
Mhm.
Well, you don't stand 12 inches away from your job to see if it's straight. The farther away you are, the more you can see shit's off level. You can adjust before you actually put your level on it.
Right.
Ceilings are 10-foot ceilings are the easiest thing to keep straight because you have such an awesome vantage point. 7-foot ceilings are some of the hardest to keep straight because your ass is right up on it.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why you always see me doing everything ceilings from the ground that I can, because I can keep it the straightest and I have the most beautiful vantage point. I can see everything in my peripherals. And that's what it really comes down to. For years, I would set up and think I was getting it set straight and try and go, and it's just not gonna happen, man. Like you need to use these markers, these sight lines. Auto taper is the creaser wheel.
Yeah.
As soon as I'm cocked and locked, I'm staring at that creaser wheel. I know in my peripheral where the angle of that creaser wheel needs to be. And I know that the entire auto taper, which is 4 or my 6 feet long, is just going to follow that. Instead of getting so, messed up with this big, massive machine with sprockets and chains and blades on it, I just concentrate on that one little thing and keeping that where I know it needs to be.
Yeah.
and everything follows through.
And just play that game of tolerances.
Corner box is the same thing. I don't use an assisted corner box. It's just personal preference. But with the corner box that I use, it's a more of a wiping motion. There's really no pushing involved. If you
Yeah.
push, you're going to hydroplane the angle head. It's the design of that box. It really feels like a nail spotter. Um, and so again, with that, I'm just looking at the actual corner box itself. I want the box itself to be parallel with the angle head. Yes, when I come into the corner, the box
Yeah.
might come down and swoop, but the whole time, if that angle head's traveling horizontally, I'm going to make sure that I have my thing up and I have that box that's horizontally, and that's my reference point. I'm not looking at what the coat looks like, where it was, where it came from until I get to the end, because then I'm going to get cocked up and it's going to reverberate in my coat. I pull the run and then I look at it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to jig it. We're talking about stand-ups. That's why I start at the top, come to the bottom. I don't want a break line in the middle. It's going to reverberate on the second and third coat. And when I sand, I have to make sure that I sand that bullshit out. And now we're at eye level. So I go out of my way. Yeah, it's a bit more work to pull, say a 9 foot stand up. I pull my break line to 16 inches off the ground. I'm going to catch it with the power sander because I'm coming around lights sockets anyways.
Mhm.
And so what if I don't sand out one of those heavy duty brake lines? I mean, they're not really that heavy duty, but if I miss, it's not the end of the world. It's all keeping it consistent, keeping it jigging. Nail spotter is one of the hardest ones, as you know, because that for me, it's more the motion. You know what I'm saying? Like I have like these micro movements for me with the nail spotter, like I like to get the blade up on first, then I like the wheels to hit, then I like to actuate the plunger just so I know, or the door, whatever you want to call it, so I feel it right on the mud. Then I apply that little bit of pressure and kind of let it collapse down on itself in a quick whipping motion. So is that I have enough momentum to rip it off the wall because it's a drag brake. That if anyone doesn't know what a drag brake is, it's the type of brake on a nail spotter, right? It's a brake that doesn't you can't. It breaks when you drag it down the wall.
Right.
Blade dragging, like we talked about, you know. We got the auto taper, we got the corner box, we got the flat box, got the
Hmm.
nail spotter. That's about it.
Yeah, man.
This up it goes for a friggin' 6 inch knife too. Like
Yeah.
I was saying, just make a mark on your 6 inch knife with a marker, a half inch in from one corner. Load your knife and pull that down a corner bead, but make sure that you line up that black marker mark with the apex of the corner bead and do not worry about anything else that you're doing. Scrape off the excess, step back and look at it. If you have good hand-eye coordination, it's gonna be perfectly straight. Butt joint screws up people too. The trick with
Mhm.
butt joints on the ceiling is you have to literally spin your body to still get that vantage point. So with butt joints, I'm always fixated on the troweling bar, the set screw, your blade adjustment. That's all I'm looking at. I'm just trying to line that up with the middle of the butt. So I always want my body on the left-hand side of the box when I'm pulling it down any butt joint. It doesn't matter. It could be on the wall or on the ceiling. And then for the ceiling, I'll literally have to turn my body around to catch it. I can't stand in the same position and swipe, swipe. I mean, I can, but if I want to be like super precise, I'll flip my whole body. It's all about where my eyeballs are on the tools. It has nothing to do with my legs,
Yeah.
has nothing to do with my arms, how I push, how I get leverage. That's all on an individual basis. But to keep the tools straight, it's not. There's one way to do it.
Yeah.
You need to cock and lock. You need to turn into a statue. And it's like we were talking about skateboarders.
Mhm.
Anyone can get up on a ledge, but you ride a ledge by getting the perfect balance and maintaining that, like becoming a statue
Yeah.
and running the tools really straight is the same thing, right? Um, and like I said, a lot of people wonder what the benefits are, but it's very straightforward once you're able to do it. You're not sanding a lot. You're planing the mud on. You're not building something up to tear it down. Like you're putting on just enough. And when
Right.
you go to sand out your flats, all you're really sanding out is that little hump in the middle where the jig, if you maintained your boxes and the blade is set properly and the box isn't like hasn't been abused too much, you don't even have to think about it. Yeah, that's really what changed it for me. I used to look down the wall and look at what I was doing and like really try my hardest. And a lot of times when I first was starting, my head was above, like my head was always above the box. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? So I'm trying to look down on it. And so I get down, like I said, it's like a ninja. Like I crouch down. That's why I love nines, because I'm a tall guy. I don't have to
Yeah.
crouch, but I crouch down so my eye is right at level with that nut. And because I know if I just do that 3 times, my life's easy. It's really the only way I've been able to like come up with a consistent system that works for me. I know if I do that, you can't really do it any more precise than that.
Yes.
Everything's going to work out for me. And if it doesn't, it's the framing and the board, and I'll just blow it out. Who cares? I'll just triple it up, quadruple it up. Who gives a shit? Everything's consistent now because I ran those codes consistent.
Right.
Sanding's consistent. Everything's consistent. You know, that's why I don't do my screws by hand the first coat. Guys do it. I understand it. You got a really bad board, you got to do it fine. But all you got to do is set your nail spotter blade higher for your first coat. I run 2 nail spotters. I run a 2 inch with a high blade. It's all stainless. I don't use a carbide because
Hmm.
they crack and et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to get into that. But I just cut down old stainless blades. My 2 inch, I set that blade high because it's just a clamp. You can set it whatever the hell you want it to be.
Yeah. Literally.
And then on my 3 inch, industry standard, like a fingernail thickness. And so I'm able to fill it deeper because it's a higher set. If you splooge on the side, who cares? Just wipe it with the nail spotter. Don't apply pressure. It's a 2 inch knife,
Yeah. Literally.
right? And so that's how I don't do shit there's no need to do that. There's really no need to do that. There's no, hey, have I left like a couple runs of screws that maybe could have used an extra coat? Of course, everybody does. You know what I mean? But to do everything by hand the first time is just, you just don't understand the nail spotter well enough.
Right.
Big problem people have the nail spotter, especially, you want your mud super wet, especially on a 2 inch, like almost auto taper, but not quite. And the reason why is because as your nail spotter, that nail spotter drags down the wall more times. That nail spotter covers more kilometers than a flat box ever will. Okay. So it's pulling off more of that drywall fuzz, dust from your pre-sand from previous coats. It's pulling that off the wall because it's a blade, more so than a flat box ever will. And what happens is the fiber from the drywall board starts to come back into the box and starts gumming up on those 2 corners,
Right.
right? And now it's a pain in the ass to use the nail spotter. Now you have to push. There's no more wiping action. And it's just because, like I said, the nail spotter's picking up. There's no way to prevent that. It happens less on a 3 inch nail spotter. The only way that you can counter that is by starting off. I never fill a full pail up of mud with nail spotter mud because I make it so wet. So I'll do like a third of a pail, soaping wet, and after the first room, the spotter picks up some of the dust and you got a nice consistency. But if you try and start with that consistency you want, you're going to feel like you're flying for the first floor. Say on like 15,000 board feet, you're flying through the first floor. And if you're not, if you have thick mud, you're screwed. Or you're cleaning, you pull that out with your finger on both sides, like every room, that's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
But if you just counteract it by making it super wet, yeah, there's going to be a couple runs where you splooge out, but it's still way faster than struggling with it.
So then how many coats are you doing?
3.
Yeah. Okay.
But again, 3 coats, 5 coats with the nail spotters way quicker than 1 coat by hand and 2 coats by a nail spotter. Anytime you got to do, especially 15,000 board feet, anything like that's going to have a 20-foot entrance. All of that shit takes time.
Yeah.
And you can catch all of that with your Columbia nail spotter with that big bastard Columbia one pole. I
Mhm.
have one of those things. I don't know how high that thing goes. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Thing goes like 10 feet or 11 feet.
Yeah.
And there's like very few occasions where I have to get my ass up on something and do it by hand when I have that thing.
Yeah. I've got the extra long extendable
Columbia thing one.
Columbia one.
Yeah. I think I made mine.
I've never found something I
Yeah.
couldn't.
I mean, I don't like I would never do that with a flat box. I used to try and get as high as I can, but like 6 feet's as high as I'm gonna go with if it's any higher than that, I'm getting on my stilts.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna do it off my stilts. I prefer to do like let's say we're doing 14 feet, 14 feet with a 4 foot handle off stilts. I'll do that before I'll try and no. Something along those lines. Maybe like 12-inch stilts. with like your body, obviously, and then like a 6 foot. I
Yeah.
like doing that shit, but getting gnarly and going high, even corner box from the ground. Like some guys have these like 6 foot poles.
Yeah.
I don't know, like it's not for me, man, because like I said, I got to get up there and I got to make sure that box parallel with the thing for as long as I can. Obviously, you can't keep it parallel when you're coming down to the floor or coming up against the next wall, but you have to maintain, for me, I have to maintain that as long as I can.
Yeah.
It's the only way you're going to keep the jig consistent.
Started doing this like the box is up top, right? And then as you come up, I would spin it to get to the top. And it worked for a little bit.
What do you come to the top of? Like another coat to break into?
No, like for your angles, my
Yeah.
verticals.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I would come down and then you like there is kind of like a point there that you
Yeah, man. You know who's gnarly at that? Do you know Gary?
no,
GTA drywall finishing,
no.
although he lives in Dundas. You serious? Yeah, Gary's an OG, man. I like Gary. Gary showed me that years ago. I was like, I don't like 7 inch corner boxes because
Yeah.
you get kifed up. And he's like, man, just tilt the whole thing. And you're only really doing that for like 16 inches as you come in, like you say. And
Yeah.
if you can be really good at that and you have that control, Gary was a stud at it.
So it is a kind of a fucking path to
Yeah, it's a thing. It's a thing for sure. Yeah,
nice.
for sure. That's a thing. But I like to keep it everything 3.5 inches away from the center. I never pull a corner box out of the three-way. I always maintain 3.5 or whatever whatever angle height I'm using that day. Let's say three. Everything is three, three, everything is three, and you can still see that tape. You know what I'm saying? I don't
Yes.
coat that shit until I've run the corner box. So I've taped it, rolled it, flushed it, ran the corner box. That three-way still hasn't been touched. And I leave that three-way like a bear as if it was still just taped. And then I just go 1, 2, 3, because back to the whole jigging philosophy. It's been built up. I don't have to guess what this three-way needs to be.
And you just fill it.
Yeah. And then you skim it. If you like the people, you skim it second time. 3 coats, man. And they come out crispy as shit because you're not fighting anything. A jig has said it for you. A
Yeah.
jig doesn't lie, man. If it's a little cockeyed, you can sand it straight. We're not plasters, we're tapers. What do I, it's like our job is to deceive your eye because
Yes.
this shit isn't straight, MF.
The illusion.
This shit's not straight, right? I'm here to trick you. You
Yeah.
hired me to trick your ass right now. Yeah.
You just seem to be very good at it.
Um, I think for me, like it's just like once I figured out one reference point and I was able to do that, they all just started to happen.
Yeah.
And it sounds crazy. It might sound like you're being like pretentious of the craft, but it literally will help you. The second that you can like it's a totally different way of running the tools. It's so alien. Like a hand taper would have such a hard time with this because you don't touch hand tools until like it's on a 7-day job until the last 3 days, you know. And hey man, it works. For me, it works. And I know I've seen other people use it because it's the Australian method, and it's just it takes humbling yourself though. You have to be like, you know what? This guy in Australia is like literally 10 times better than me. Okay, and he's been doing it probably less than me. But you know what? Hot dog, that shit looks like amazing.
Yeah.
And so now I have to relearn how I do everything. And they're not going to tell me shit. I wouldn't tell me shit either. And that's why we're here.
That's funny.
The cat's out of the bag.
We're ruining the industry.
I mean, the points of reference on the tools are that's going to be someone's first huge breakthrough. After that is like what you and I were talking about. One thing is tape drag on horizontal angles.
Yep.
And so once you figure out how much you need to advance, because everyone advances down different. Again, I use a reference point when I advance my tapes for corners. So I advance down to the crossbar on your creaser wheel arm. So that's like I say, 1.5 inches before the bottom of the creaser wheel. That's where I advance down to. It just works for me how tall I am, where I set my taper before I go. And like I was saying to you, Sean, once you know you advance at 3 inches, as soon as you're able, when you come off the wall at a top horizontal corner angle, naturally you're right up against the wall. The auto taper is you and the auto taper are kind of parallel with one another. But as soon as you're able to get the head of the auto taper about a foot and a half ahead of your crotch, so if the auto taper is perfectly parallel with that top angle, if it's
Mhm.
at your crotch, you don't want that. You want it a foot and a half ahead.
Yeah. So think about it as not at 90 degrees, but at 15 or 45 degrees.
And then you're not going to
45.
pull the tape because naturally, if your stick is perfectly straight in the wall and your tape you're just trying to pull a 90-degree angle.
Yeah.
It's not, you're going to pull the whole freaking thing. And like we were saying, you might be good for, say it's a 20-foot run, you might be good for the first 10 feet. It's the second that taper comes back to 90 degrees, you're going to pull it out.
Yeah.
So it's almost as if you need to cock and lock yourself in that position and maintain until you get to the end of the wall, and you will eliminate tape drag. The same goes for when you're pulling a tape, vertical tape from the floor up. Like I said to you, naturally the taper is going to be parallel with the floor. To start, you advance your tape 3 inches, you're going to start parallel, but that taper, as soon as that taper can get up more, when you're doing those, you want to go like 45 because it's just going to make it quicker and easier. As soon as you get that thing in a 45, you lock, maintain, and keep going. You don't want to start jumbling and jiggering. It's a jig. Even though
Yeah.
it's an auto taper, it's still a jig.
Yeah. That like squatting, like if you have ever done squats, just like standing up straight, like engaged, has been a fucking game changer for my
Yeah.
basically everything.
Well, it's exactly like squats. Like the only difference between squats is that your hands are locked on that bar.
Oh,
And
totally.
so we've been calling it statuing yourself
Yeah.
because for me, you know, whether you're on a skateboard or whether you're running a flat box, as soon as you cock and lock it and you can maintain that for as
Mhm.
long as you can maintain that, you're going to ride that ledge as long as you can, or you're going to run that box as straight as you can. Right. And so doing the squats, the same thing. Like your legs are moving, but
Yeah.
you've learned to control all these muscles to be perfectly there to lift that weight.
Yeah.
And so the auto taper and the thing's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's all in the legs,
Get
right?
the
Like,
head up, do the
right. I
squat.
mean, the auto taper is obviously like harder than doing a squat. Like you can't really
Yeah.
move the barbell this way and that way, but it would be like doing what my homie, the Dave dude, he has 9 kids.
Jesus.
Dave has 9 kids is his Instagram thing. He's super rad dude, man. Yeah, he's been like following me for like 8 years. And he does that shit competitively.
Oh,
You should check him out, man.
yeah,
You like him.
I bet.
But anytime I make a post, he'll send the most inappropriate message to me about like just I'm like, Dave, come on, you're better than this. Right? Sometimes I have to delete his comments. They're so raunchy. Yeah, can you imagine, Dave? But anyways, Dave does that competitively. And so it's the squat without the squat rack machine thing.
Yeah.
And he does those big, huge, gnarly ones. So it's exactly the same. Like he knows how to cock and
Yeah.
maintain that balance and then move his legs, and the auto taper in the corner is the same one.
Yeah.
So you wonder why he sucks so hard at the auto taper then.
Me.
No, him. He's
Oh,
always asking me questions. Just oh, but yeah, no, it's I think the way that I get the power to the tools compared to you is a lot more different. Like if I were a female or if I were teaching a female or someone with not as much upper body strength as you, I would be
mhm.
teaching them the leverage method is what I use.
Yeah.
I get my power by doing this. You get your power by doing this.
Yeah.
I get my power by doing this.
Yeah.
Right. And throw my whole body weight into it. Like I was showing you stand-ups. I'm like,
Yeah. You're gonna
it's
snap
like I'm
that.
playing soccer with the wall. I'd like run into it, run back, fling it down, pop it up, flip it over. I'll tell you another trick. Someone taught me this by accident. They did it. I was working with them. I'm not going to say who.
Okay.
Because one time I was like, man, thanks for showing me that. Like when you came out on site, that like was a game changer for me. And he's like, I don't do that.
Like you, sir.
And then so I was like, oh, you don't do this? He's like, no, I don't do that.
Oh.
So then I'm like, we're having dinner that night. And I'm like, oh, you were just rushing because, whenever you're working with someone, it doesn't matter who the fuck it is, you're always trying to put your best foot forward.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you crazy bastard. You have no idea what you just figured out. That was fucking genius. But you got your flat box, right?
Yeah.
But Columbia is pretty good because the setting springy thing
Mhm.
sits higher than the actual bar. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So stand-ups especially, You know, when you're trying to set up your stand up, you're always kind of, okay, I better make sure the box is in the middle of the joint before I pull it. And that
Yes.
can kind of be troublesome when you're like 9 feet up with a 6 foot pole. I don't even think about it, man. All you do is you take it and you just slam that bastard right up. Just slam her up, right?
Okay.
And naturally, this is going to catch and the wheels are going to want to smack down. And now you've smacked her up. You're right up. You're pushing it up. And then you adjust it from side to side instead of, okay, shit, I got to stay a little bit away.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Yeah.
Slam that bastard up. When you're doing stand-ups, I'll use the nut.
Yes.
Line the nut up if you can still see the middle of the tape, But again, this is ideal because you'll always be able to see that bevel until
Yeah.
third coat and run her down. Don't try and dink around. Slam her up, man. Just smack it up there. Don't think twice. Just try and move it side to side on the ankle. That was a big game changer for me because
Yeah.
now I was able, especially with stand-ups, you don't have to think about getting it up there. You just release as soon as you come down, release the brake, hold the brake till you're like 3 feet away from the corner, release the brake, smack it right in. Your brake's off, you're already in position, pull her again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you see these people? They like add like speed up to their what are you doing? Man, what are you showing me right now that you're slow with the tools and you have to use the speed up thing to like what are we talking about? That's not it. But that's the gatekeeping shit. It's cool, man, to see people's progression.
For sure.
That's awesome. But don't do that and then follow it up with like, this is how you run a flat box by whoever,
Yeah.
Instagram.internet.com.
Yeah.
Just
Meta.
keep it real. Man,
Yeah.
keep it real. Like I'm a horrible teacher, like
Say that.
in my mind, it all makes sense. Yeah, but you understand the tools. I could
Yeah.
like explain it,
Yeah.
but I couldn't just take like some guy who is like, no, no, it's a feeling. It's even down to like coating corned beef with a flat box.
Mhm.
Like you saw how my handle works. Well, my handle didn't always do that. So you learn to the extendable handle I use is a North Star handle, and the brake is a lot thicker. It's wider than competitor brands. And I think it was just done because it fits on the palm of your hand nicely, but I use it in a different way. I use it because I can apply leverage to one side of the box or the other. So if this is a 10-inch box and I want to coat beads and I know that the mud is slipping in the box here and I go to start it again, I'll literally be able to apply pressure to this. And this whole plate is bending. This part of the plate is bending in more than this one and able to coat me up there. Yeah. But it all just comes, man, with when you get there and how you feel it. And with the North Star handle, you're able to do that because of that nubby knob on the end. You're not able to do that with a matrix.
Hmm.
You'd probably fucking blow it. A tape tech one, maybe, but no, probably not. Um, but hey, every brand does things that the other doesn't. It's just the
Mhm.
way it is, and everything works for everybody else. One thing that's most important for all brands, though, if you don't set your blade right, and you're not being conscious about your settings, then you can't blame the tool. You know
Right.
what I mean? It's just the way it is. Like I have been guilty of that in the past, and then I mean, as I got better, I was like, oh shit. Let's
Yeah.
try that again. And then I'm like, oh, nuts. And sometimes I was right. Hey, you know what I mean? In my own mind, sometimes my assumption was right, but other times it wasn't. And um, literally every single day, man, sometimes 3 times a day, I'm checking my blade,
Yeah.
you know?
When you're adding pressure like that, like you're saying into the one side or the other of the box, you must be so careful not to like because that's extra pressure.
It's like a no, it's like a
Or is that kind of the
no, it's where I'd use
pressure?
this skateboarding analogy again.
Okay,
Like
okay.
you've done an ollie at some point in your life. Everyone I think has
Yeah.
done an
Long
ollie.
time. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So a flat box works a lot like a skateboard. It's really hard for people to wrap their head around it. And it's easy for me because I've been on it the last, few weeks. But when you ollie,
The last few weeks.
when you ollie, the wood, the tail of the board, snaps the ground at the same time that you jump, and it kind of flicks you up. So your toe is never on the wood and the concrete at the same time. You like pressure flip it down, and as it comes up, you're jumping at the same time. So there's no pressure on that. So to what you're talking about, no. Like when you're doing an ollie, there's like 2 point, like to me, the way I look at it, there's like 2 points of like snapping or pressure. One when the board hits the ground, and then the second time when it hits your feet as you're up in the air. Like you have two chances to do something with the board. The same thing with a flat box. You can apply pressure on the whole housing of the
That's
unit
what I was
to
gonna
keep
say.
it on the wall, and then or you can apply pressure to the actual plate.
Right.
And most people, when you're using a flat box handle, you're only applying pressure to the plate. If you have like, I don't know if you saw my handle, the brake and the brakeless handle. Well, because I don't have to have one handle on the brake on something like that, or you could use a closet monster. It's the same shit,
Yeah.
right? Just not as fancy. You can apply more pressure to the door to get the mud out and less pressure to the body, but you have to apply two sets of pressures, right? So I'm holding just with and it's a two-hand operation.
Right.
I'm holding just enough pressure on the body of the box with my left hand, and then my right hand is the one that's like, I'm gonna apply pressure. I'm gonna push it over
Yeah.
because I want to get up high on the right hand side of that box plate, or I want to come down left on it. Or if I'm doing a bead and it's really heavy this way, it's like that.
Right.
Yeah. Like we were talking blade dragging. This is just like a cornucopia of like bits.
Yeah, you're fucking welcome, everybody. Okay.
Well, I feel like we're like just being like scatterbrainy, but
That's the best thing though about long form conversation, man, is like you sit there for 3 hours, you're gonna hit a bunch of fucking topics, man, one way or the other.
oh, this guy.
Keep wondering if that's now that I know what's happening today. It's okay, Brad. Everyone will wait.
No, man.
Just
This is going to be a gnarly new construction season. I'm
yeah.
hyped about it because like a lot of dudes kind of have like the same mentality as me, or it's just like, oh, okay, you know, oh, yeah, right. COVID is like over.
Yeah.
Shit's like really back to normal. A lot of good men fell, a lot of bad men fell in the business. The dust has settled. Businesses got in our, where I'm talking our area, right?
Yeah.
And now it's like, okay, shit, you know, I'm hyped. And yeah, I forget what we were talking about. Should we just have one more smoke?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, let's do that. Oh, this guy.
I'll be right back again. And we are back.
Like, how's the video work? Is it gonna be like on a YouTube thing?
Yeah, man. Oh yeah, yeah.
Can I tell you a funny story? Is it recording?
Yeah.
Let me tell you a funny story about YouTube. I'll try to make it quick. Okay, so like I've been doing drywall internet since 2017, 18, 19, 20, 7 years
Yeah.
ish.
Yeah.
And I've never had, and again, I don't give a shit. It's just really ironic and interesting. Never had like a video that had like 20,000 views in my life. I'm like the chip at the rock guy. I think the most I ever got maybe was like 10,000, right?
Which is fucking huge.
Well,
No, you mean.
especially back in the day, but the retention on the likes was always good. Like on 10,000, you're getting like 300 likes. It's like fucking 3%. That's good,
Yeah.
right? So 3 years ago, just for shits and giggles, like I had gotten YouTube Premium because I hate the commercials and I love watching documentaries and shit on YouTube. And so you get this like creator thing too, is it makes it super easy to upload videos and whatnot. And it was right when Shorts came out on YouTube. So I just randomly put this half-ass greeny video of me that was like a story post on Instagram that was in my archive of me using a corner box. And like in the first day, it got 16,000 views. Yeah. Right. And so I'm like, okay, I give up. I'm quitting. This is I for a few years, I mean, not so much last year. I put a lot of time and effort into that shit. And it just was like, there's no rhyme or reason for this. This is like going and buying a lottery ticket. And so it was at that point that I had succeeded that like, people are gonna like you, they're not gonna like you, you're gonna get lucky, you're not gonna get lucky.
Yeah.
And people didn't like me and I didn't get lucky, I guess. But yeah, we were talking about the blade dragging.
Yeah.
And like I was saying, if you could see it on the video, like when the box is perfectly on the when the box is perfectly on the ground on flat on the wall and your wheels are touching. It's again why I like this box's beauty with these inside track things. In fact, I love these things. These are very well made. And it's a small span box. So I like axles. I don't like inside track because that axle absorbs anything that happens before it. But on something this small, you're usually really cocked up on the box, aren't you? Um, so these are meant, but I digress. It's a jig, right? And so the whole thing was designed and it all works off it being flat on the wall. And then whatever comes out of this troweling bar or crack, that's what the setting 3 is when it's flat on the wall. Setting 3 is not when you're blade dragging, which means your wheels are off the wall. So if this is on 3 right now, if I do this, we're probably like 1. And if I'm inconsistent, like say pulling up on too high up, say like 4 feet on a stand up, and I'm blade dragging the last foot where I'm breaking in, well, I've gone from a 3 to maybe a 2 to a 1 up at the break, and that's a lot more inconsistent. Now, if you got another coat to cover and you're consistent with that coat, you never blade drag, fine. But odds are, if you blade drag on the second, you're probably gonna do it on the third. So it's super imperative if you want consistency in the coat and you want to try and stay straight is to keep your wheels on the wall as long as possible. Obviously, when you're breaking from a flat into a butt, you have to blade drag for the distance of the box. I mean, that's really another great tip. If you're having a hard time breaking from your flats into your butts and you're still having to go back and people call it a tie-in. I don't know what that means. Like, we don't pick up the hand tools till like
about tie-ins. They're meant
yeah.
so they get to your level.
So all you got to do to eliminate a tie-in, this is the only time you're ever going to blade drag, is your box is running to the butt, right? As soon as the wheels come to the butt, you just pull it up 1/2 centimeter, right? And now you're blade dragging until you see the overhang on the trowel bar,
Right.
and you flick it off. That's really breaking out, not thick and high as opposed to low and flat is really that's an art and a skill. And the only difference between that is it's easier to flick off aggressively and let your wheels come off high quickly. But if you come and you still hover those wheels like 1/2 centimeter, 1/4 inch above the co, you're going to get those really nice flat brake lines. And then that's when you get to the point where you're not having to pre-sand in between coats, aside from the odd butt joint.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if anyone says they don't pre-sand, well, then you're just like, like you're either like super careful with the flat box and like that time saved is redundant, or you're bullshitting.
Yeah.
Because everybody pre-sands to some extent on 15,000 board feet. I'm going to pre-sand for about 45 minutes in the morning. That's it. I'm just pre-sanding out my brakes because there's always going to be a little fleckle that flies off the box, and anything we know that the next coat hits is going to reverberate in the next coat, and we don't want that because then we're moving backwards, like people who tape drag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucking tape draggers.
But a lot of people who box speed, you'll see them blade drag the whole thing, and then that's why you have to go back and wipe it. And I'm not against that, man. If that's what you have to do to get
it on there quick.
If that's what you have to do to get used to finally getting around to coating corner bead with a box without using a knife, I did it for a long time, man. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just if you are ever find yourself in that situation when you go to wipe, just try and mimic the box as much as possible. So pull it in one swoop.
Right.
Right. That was the hardest one for me though. I did blade drag until the multi ones came out, and it's just a different style of box. So because you have that overhanging trowel bar, it kind of enables you to get that mud really into the apex. It's where you're gonna have a hard time boxing. But I'll tell you the easiest way to box bead is not up close. The farther you are from it when you're boxing it, the more leverage you can get on the box because it's the heaviest coat you're ever going to put on.
Right.
When you're boxing bead. I don't even feel it's steel bead where what I do. I don't do trim text, none of that shit unless they put it on.
Yeah.
Right. Figuratively speaking, right? It's all shit.
Yeah.
But whatever shit they put on, I tape it in. I don't care what it is, whether it's trim text, corner bead, I tape it in. What I used to do was I would hit it with a cheater coat So I take my so they put on the bead,
Yeah.
take my 6-inch knife and quickly just give it a sloppy 3-inch fill
Yep.
before I'd run the box. But then I started to tape in everything with fibofuse. And now what I've done is I've created a very flat surface for my jig
Right.
to jig over. I'm not jigging over a bead that has a million holes in it, trim text, or a traditional bead that's, perforated every whatever, 3/4 of an inch.
Right.
I'm not trying to pull over that anymore. All that's been filled. I have this nice flat plane for my jig to come over. And then I was able to do it without having to like even wipe even once. And again, there's always the odd bead in the house, right?
Yeah.
And it's because you're getting all that leverage on it, especially when you're running those boxes. It was like I was telling you before, we're talking about how you hold it.
Hmm.
Anyone who's a novice box runner is always when they're running that box, they're concerned about pushing that plate and getting that mud out. But once you start really developing your technique, you realize that there's really 2 points of pressure that you're having to concentrate on. And the most important point of pressure is that arc on the trowel bar. You're always trying to have pressure on this trowel bar. That will hydroplane, man, and you're setting 4 or 5 when you're skimming turns into 3 and you've blown it and you don't realize it until you sand. You might not never realize it, but you're really actually doing more work than you need to. That's the most important for me, is always keeping that thing down when I'm doing beads. And then the next, obviously, is trying to get the arc up here. I'm not trying to throw my pressure into it down there.
Right.
Everyone, you see novice people, you're just pushing that whole motion's keeping you on the wall. And you really got to try and wrap your head around it, even if you got to get a second hand on it. There's a lot of times when I'm doing no coat where I don't even use a handle. This box is the best for that. The Columbia, whatever this is, 5.5, man. You don't need a handle. Think of it as a 6-inch knife. It's all it is a 6-inch knife with mud in it. Just start using it with your hand and see the shit you can come up with. Like you have a shitty, in a bathroom, a bad octagon box thing, tape it in and then coat it around the and see how quick you can do those and how consistent. It's a perfectly plain, consistent coat. Then go hit it with your hand.
Yeah.
Make the machine do the hard work, and then your hand will follow that jig. And that's why you always hear me say I don't pull out my hand tools for the most part until like,
Yeah.
we're on third coat. Yeah, there's no rules to this. There's no program or school or any of this shit. Jin's gonna tell you one way and John's gonna tell you the next way. I just look at people's work. I
Yep.
like to see tidy, straight, clean work. I know the discipline that takes. I know the strategy that's required. You really got to think about what you're doing. You're not going to build Rome in one day. Like you want to go and you want to tape flats and hit corners and do the fucking screws and get one coat on butts all in one day. Blow your brains out, man. You're working 3 times harder than I
Yeah.
have to, or a guy who is like really dedicated to the machines. They'll do everything for you. It's cross hatching. That's all it is. You're overlapping perfectly plain coats of mud. You're just cross hatching. It's perfect. You wipe out your ridge, you cross hatch into the next one and worry about it at the end. You're building up these perfectly plain coats of mud so that when you skim, it's literally a true skim where you're getting the mud on and pulling it as tight as you can just to get rid of that weird, fuzzy, drywall-y texture that HDT Karen Smith, your client, can see at 3 p.m. in the autumn on the southwest side of her great room wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
You just got to sell her on Fresco Harmony, don't you? Hey, you know what, Karen? The wall's screwed up and the drywall's fucked. So why don't you use Shadow Rider Ninja Gold Seal? Yeah, by Fresco Harmony. I imagine that as being black with some purple and some gold.
Yeah, dude. See that? Nick's gonna hear this and fucking go,
It's like Darkwing Duck shit.
watch this. Darkwing Duck.
Okay, you want to know something?
Yeah.
Darkwing Duck. Okay, so you look at the logo. I mean, it's a pretty popular font.
Yes.
Thrasher uses it too.
Oh, good call.
Darkwing Duck and Columbia Tools.
Yeah.
Very, very suspect.
Do you know what's cool?
My hoodie, yo, man, look at this hoodie. It's the exact same. It's a very popular font in like the 90s. It's the same, exact same font. See? Yeah, see? Yeah, it's a soup darkening dock too.
I love it.
Yeah.
Somebody from the troll group, when I got attached to them, you get brought into like the group chat. There's like 100 people in there, and you end up following everybody. And somebody sent me a comment of like, that's cool apparel. It reminds me of Thrasher
Yeah.
like a week ago. So
Yeah.
it's cool that you say that.
Yeah, it's a Thrasher font too.
Yeah.
I like probably about 4 years ago when I was trolling them.
Yeah.
That's a good segue.
There you
When
go.
I was trolling them, I had that one locked and loaded one day. So
Nice.
I'm like, what the even the font, man? Come on. Right. And then I'm like,
But I love
shit.
it.
Then I'm like, shit, Thrasher. Oh, I forget. It's like something Sans. It's like very popular in the 80s. Like
Yeah.
everyone was using it. But the Darkwing Duck one I love because it's like, you know how Columbia's, it's like a very exaggerated version of the font where it looks like a flat box has done it. That's what I see in it.
Yeah.
I see like a flat box has coded this, and that's why I like it. Um, the Darkwing Duck has it very exaggerated like that too.
Yeah. I've never looked at it like that.
I had a long time to think about them. Oh shit. Oh Lord. The next podcast is just gonna be about North Star tools, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to reschedule that one.
We'll just talk about that.
I mean, I think everybody wants to hear everything. I don't think anything needs to be super restrictive.
Well, at the end of the day, it's not the tool, it's the operator. As
100%.
much as I'd love to give Mark all of the
Mhm.
credit for like what my craft, I can't because I've seen people butcher it with his tools,
Yep.
and he knows that. And the same goes with like Columbia versus some of these like fly-by-nighter assholes who will come up with a YouTube channel. They're third private labeling, third partying something, parts from here, yeah, machine two parts and
Yeah.
all these one time, one and done. I want to see them around for 20 years and then I'll trust you a little bit
Yeah.
because you're just going to sell the shit once you're ready to go.
Yeah.
That's the guys who are truly passionate about they like it. They like being involved in it. It's their job. It's all of our jobs to one extent, and they enjoy their job. I mean, it's not that I enjoy it. It's just there's a lot of other things that I'd rather not be doing. I'll take this. This is fine,
Totally.
you know. Um, and I think when it comes down to the difference between brands like we can throw Tape Tech in there too, Columbia, Tape Tech, and North Star, and even Can-Am, even though it's kind of in a different thing. It's a different fit for everybody.
Hmm.
Like the multi one, I love it. I love it, but it's not for everybody. It really isn't. Like I wouldn't recommend a novice starting with it. It's an intricate piece of hardware. It's good if you know a little bit about the box. It requires more maintenance. You gotta, I don't want to say babysit it, but you do. And I'm hard as shit on my tools.
Right.
And I've had to repair parts on it, not because of anything other than I'm just hard as shit on them. Like I disrespect them. Never leave them in water, but I'll do just about anything else to them. They've fallen off 25-foot scaffold and like it shit happens, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And and uh and it's just not for everybody. That's a big investment. I think that box is like 850, and I would not buy that. It does two things in one,
Yeah.
in my opinion, better than anybody else, but it's not for everybody. If you don't take care of that shit, if you don't clean it, if you don't have a place to clean it, if you don't know where, like it's just not like a regular box. And the same goes for their corner box. The same goes for the North Star system. Does not is the whole North Star tool system. Mark can tape, okay? I don't know how well now, but he could tape at one point, right? And so the tools that are in the system was how he taped, and he taught me how to tape. Many years ago, he told me the system. Use this set with his tools. Said I don't can't speak for the other tools, but
Yeah.
with my tools, use this, do this. And for the first 2 years, I didn't listen to him. Then one day, I was just whatever. It was one of those days. I'm playing with house money. I'll try what he said. And it was a eureka moment. And then I finally realized that every tool that he put out was meant to work with one another. And then that's when the whole jig concept he explained to me all started making sense. But again, it was all predicated on the tools that he produces all being the same,
Right.
you know? And so that's not for everybody. I
Mhm.
wouldn't like, I mean, Mark would like me to sit here, and there was a time when I would like to sit here and say, yeah, just start with the best. Go for it. Why F around, man? Just go in what I consider the best in my mind, right? What I've had the best results with.
Columbia Tools is the best.
So But I can't say that because there's people who are 50% of people who jump into the investment are going to fail fucking miserably,
Right.
right? 80% of people who start with like semi-auto and then move up are going to stick with it.
Yeah.
Those are really the only two numbers I can give you. And so why would you go through the trouble of tracking down a complete set of North Star, investing the extra money in the North Star when you don't even know how to utilize that tool?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, my first 2 years, would a North Star have helped yet? In my opinion, yeah, a little bit, but not that much, like the fundamentals. And even in more so, if in my opinion, North Star is the best, the other brands, in my opinion, would be inferior. Well, I learned on those. So in a way, it kind of helped me, didn't it? Because in my mind, I was handicapped. The tools were slowing me down in
Right.
my mind. Maybe I was mistreating them. Maybe I didn't have them tuned. It was the beginning.
Yeah.
Who the hell knows, right? Um, and so this way worked for me. You know what I mean? I was able to utilize it, and I mean, the rest is history. But I swear by the North Star tools for what I do with it. I swear by Columbia tools for what I use for them for.
Yeah.
I'm intermingled and mixed. I've tried just about everything you could try.
Yeah.
I like Can-Am extendable handles. It's a disposable tool. Like, and do you have one, a Can-Am one? I have to get you one. They're so great. Well, Columbia has
I've
one.
had them.
Columbia has
Yeah.
one. So whatever. You have a Columbia twist lock, which
Yeah.
is a Ranky twist lock.
Yeah.
They're fantastic. It's just Can-Am's is built, in my opinion, the best.
Yeah.
Um, and they're fantastic. And I wouldn't want any other brand. Like Mark could be like, hey, here's this one. I was like, what? This is working fine for me, man.
Yeah.
You know,
Is that what you got your angle heads on? Like for when you're wiping?
I use everybody
Yeah.
except for Columbia, so I don't really use everybody.
That's
I use Tape Tack. I use Tape
yeah.
Tack
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
use North Star. I use a North Star 2.5 and I use a Tape Tech 3,
Okay.
only because a North Star 3.5 is actually like a 3.25. And the bevel on a lot of the board that I tape into is actually 3 inches. So I find with the Tape Tech 3, which is an exact 3, I never get any excess mud. I'm literally cupping on the bevel side, obviously, not all board, like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
not every angle is at the bevel, but on the ones that are, it's just so butter, man. It's like filling in the hole.
Yeah.
And just the way that Tape Tech, I don't know that, I think Columbia still does it, but North Star does it. You can take the tension off the spring and you get the thicker coat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
On the bigger heads. It just works out for me. Like I love my North Star 3.25, but it's a little bit too big for those situations. If I'm doing commercial, it's the North Star,
Yeah.
but nothing bigger than a 3.25. It's at that point you're creating an angle. There's
Right.
always a situation. Some guys, I mean, 3.5, 3.5, I would say is like as big as I'd ever consider, but that'd be a rare occasion. To me, it's unnecessary.
Right.
If you're taping behind good contractors, you're using resilient,
Yes.
they're using 5/8 or at least ceiling board, and they know what they're doing. It doesn't matter how bad the framing is, shit like that. Like you're gonna be able to fix it, uh, and to jig it out. And that's sort of the North Star system never had fleshers incorporated into it because a flesher is a totally different way of taping.
Hmm.
It's like using a hand tool. It's not a jig.
Right.
An angle head, you can only push it so far on the wall. It
Yeah.
only does one thing.
Once it kind of activates.
It only goes one way. It's consistent the whole way through. It can't be anything else. A flesher's not like that. Homie who is like less is more, that guy's a vet with a flesher. He's been using a flesher for a long time, I'm assuming. Has he? Like a long time? Remember the guy who's like, when you use the flesher, just
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
wipe
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
been using it for a long ass time. That's the difference.
Years or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. So you prove my point that I always say to everyone.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with a flesher. The difference between a flesher and an angle head is a flesher takes 15 years to be as consistent in the code as an angle head does.
Yeah.
An angle head is, you just need to know how to use an auto taper because you can only flesh tapes with an angle head if it's set with an auto taper.
Right.
If you're doing it the other way, God bless you. Again, it's taking you years to get that good.
Yeah.
With a flesher, it takes you 15 years to get that good. An angle head, guys, just as quick, probably quicker, more consistent and cleaner in a year and a half because
Yeah.
you can only push that thing in so far. The whole trick behind that is the auto taper, knowing how to roll,
Yeah.
setting it, knowing how to roll it, knowing how to set it with the auto taper. I'm sorry, and roll with the roller.
See, just reminded me. Can I ask you a question? Yeah, okay. Columbia today said you got to forfeit all your auto tools. You get to keep one. And I said the throttle box, right? Nobody's doing that by hand as fast as quality. But what would your
Well, it
answer?
definitely wouldn't be the throttle box because the throttle box is just overcompensating
Yeah,
for
angle box. We'll say angle box.
throttle box is just overcompensating for tolerance in that tool. Like I'm telling you right now, like people want to hear it, man. It doesn't matter if it's a fucking Tape Tech, a Columbia, or a North Star. If you were to use a 7-inch box, even a Columbia 7-inch box, I don't even know if they make a throttle box that way. Take the springs off of that thing. Make your mud wet.
Yes.
You do not have control, the same amount of control over a non-auto anything as you do, like you don't have control over an auto anything, whether it's fucking continuous flow or whether it's a throttle box. It was a cool idea when it came out, but in retrospect, it really makes no fucking sense. I'm just being honest
Yeah,
with you,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
Um, I think I think the 7-inch Columbia box is probably just as good as the North Star one without the throttle shit on it.
Yeah,
Honestly, I would challenge anybody to try that because when you take the springs off of that thing,
yeah,
you can now pick out the bullshit. Any video you see on the internet, you're gonna see some asshole run his corner box, and then you can see, and then here's the big, huge swamp toxic Avenger sculpture I made for you in the corner that I now have to clean out. Right?
yes.
You take your springs off and you get up and get a little bit more control. There's no need for that shit. After we with a non-auto, it doesn't matter if it's a Tape Tech or a Columbia 7, just take the springs off the thing.
Yeah.
You'll see when we're done coating it, like I told you, you just leave it. It's perfectly planed. You have complete control. You put that corner, okay, so now we're going to coat the corners. You put that corner box up on the wall, you let the wings of the angle head depress, then you
Yeah.
wait until you feel the back of the mud, and then you just wipe it down the wall. Now, how the hell are you going to do that with springs on it? Tell me. You're not. It's
Yeah.
not happening.
Yeah.
And so that's just the way that goes. But what was your question, sorry?
What would your only thank you for it. Thank you. Appreciate that. Um, I'm just joking, everybody. So what would you can only have one
I know I saw that post.
because that's a good question, man.
Yeah, but it's like shit. I think it's the 12-inch.
Seriously?
Yeah, box because if because um I can do like I don't need 3 box. Like if it was dire straits and I only had one box, I could do a house with a 12-inch. I couldn't do it with an 8. I couldn't do it with a 10, but
Right.
I could do a whole house with a 12, no fucking problem. So anytime I've seen that thing come up or someone's like mentioned that in their thing, I've always thought to myself, okay, well, if you just have one and you don't have a handle either, you just have the box, right? Like that's another tool, right? So
Yeah.
if I just had one, what is something that takes the most amount of time? And so for me, yeah, it's always been the 12-inch, and it wouldn't even be a multi one.
I was gonna say that you were gonna say
No,
that,
it would
but
be a 12-inch box. You can do
because
so
my
much.
box is too big.
You can do so much with a regular 12-inch
Totally.
box.
Yeah.
Like there's so many things you can do with it. I've just gotten so bored at times where I've just rounded hole bad light sockets. You learn how to pivot the box. It's like
Yeah.
we were talking, like people, I think once people realize when you're coding out any like window returner or whatever, as soon as you get to the corner, it's just like a pivoting motion. Like you're you
Like
just
a compass.
pivot it. Yeah, like
Yeah.
a compass, like we're saying, and then you come down. That's the same concept as what I've been like trying to say about peripheral vision design. It's the exact same concept. Like your subconscious, if you don't know what you're doing when you're doing that, what you're subconsciously doing is you're concentrating on that overhanging trowel bar, the brass bar, just staying on that point. That's all you're really looking at. That's how you get good at it.
Right.
You're never really looking over here. And that one's always easy if you're using a short handle because you can always kind of hook your finger. Oh dear. You can always kind of hook your finger in there and then use that as a guide as well, right? I've done that too. That's another one for people who are having a hard time with corner bead, if you're using a small handle, hook your hook your finger down here. Prevent the mud from splooging out. It's like a little squeegee, right? Just, I mean, don't go too fast. You're gonna get like burned on
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of times it's like, shit, I'm not gonna get this job done on time. I better try something different.
Yeah.
And just up the handle. You know what I mean? And I think that's how a lot of things have happened for me because and a lot of guys who've taught me a lot of the things that the tools are very unorthodox.
Yeah.
For a long time, there was a way, and then everything has kind of been brought to the next level because of all the Australian guys. Nobody would have started to, I never would have thought about, like, hey, all of these other, like this next layer of auto tools, once you get, it's like driving a car, right? Like anyone can drive a car from point A to point B, but not anyone is a good race car driver. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like I'm not a professional driver, either of you, but we can drive cars,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's the next, that's where when you start figuring out these micro movements and the sequence of events, the best one's the auto taper, because that's like we were saying, like if you're having a hard time with the auto taper and you have the auto taper in your truck or your van or whatever, and you're not pulling it out, and it's like you hear guys say shit like, hey, just try it for a bit. And when it jams, put it away, and you're still not about that. It's like we were saying, you can literally use that thing like a semi-auto
Yeah.
taper, like a slot box, just to understand how it starts, how it works.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first battle, is I call it, forward, neutral, and reverse. People call it the open gate, the closed gate, and the whatever, like, but just using it to pull tapes, fill the auto taper up, put paper tape on it, jam that thing in between a couple of boxes, a stack of mud boxes, and just start pulling the tape out of it, man, and cut your tapes, even if it's just for the closet. And that you'll learn how to at least advance tapes and pull tapes and cut tapes without jamming it.
Learn the mechanism.
All right, and worst case scenario, you got your slot box right there. Anyways, you can just start pulling that thing out
Right.
because it is hard. But as you know, it's a game changer as soon as you and five fuse. I mean, never for angles, obviously, but for flats, five fuse is gonna cut down your learn time on an auto taper. Even if you hate the shit, even if you don't like how it itches you or whatever,
Hmm.
just use it for the first few months. It's gonna cut down the learning curve by at least 6 months.
Yeah.
There's a lot more forgiveness when you're cutting because, as you know, you have to come to a complete stop.
Yep.
With five fuse, you don't necessarily have to. If you don't, over time, your blade return is going to start gumming up with the actual fibers,
Yeah.
the
'Cause you're
individual
tearing it, not
fibers.
cutting it.
And then those individual fibers, especially on an auto taper where the head doesn't come off, what ends up happening on a long session
Yeah.
is those fibers will just start to accumulate, and then the blade is not returning that 1 millimeter back. And then every time you cut it to the left, it's jamming. But if you cut it to the right, you're fine.
Right.
Yeah, so there's all those little nuances behind the fiber fuse, but it's an easy fix. You just clear the chamber, right?
Totally.
Unwind the spring, and I just like to pull that thing manually back and forth, and then you're good to go.
Yeah.
The nail spotter, the one though, with the fuzz in the corner, that was a good one. It was random.
I'm like,
It'll happen with this thing too, eh? When you're running this thing on no coat, if you got a lot of no coat, because it's such a small box and the dust and the fibers don't have enough mud to coagulate and not affect you, you'll get it just like on a nail spotter. This will start to build up like Play-Doh-y and Play-Doh-y, even though the mud that you keep filling in is great. It's picking up those hairs and they're getting pushed to there. And so that beautiful feathered edge starts to look a little bit,
rounded.
it's straight and shit, but it's not like crisp.
Yeah.
You run your code and then you come back 10 minutes later and you can see how straight it was because it's starting to dry up.
You would probably hate me because every time that I refill the box, I give the front of it a little scrape and a spot.
When I started, the first 2 years I did that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that
Okay.
until you can fill that thing and slap her up without any bullshit, any problems. It's
Yeah.
literally like a one motion. It's for me, it's like you fill, you grab the box and then you're on and you go. Until you can do that, there's no rush.
Yeah.
You're just gonna blow it, man, for years. Even when I was making the videos, especially with my corner box, every pull I would go back and clean the thing, like every pull, right? And people would be like, they see the video, not me going to clean it.
Yeah.
Every run with like, how do you keep it so clean? And I remember telling the guy, like, I clean it after every pull.
Like practice.
Like that came a year later when we figured it all out. But
Yeah.
the thing, so there's we're talking about this fuzz and this gum and this Play-Doh, and someone who there's gonna be people who hear that, I think, that are like, oh shit, I know exactly what he's talking about. Right? That's all I had to do. It can benefit you with your angle head. That benefits you. So I used to clean the angle head every run or every couple of runs, right? What I realized is, yeah, you might be sloppy for the first room. The mud's a bit wet, but as you keep pulling that angle head, we're doing like a lot of meters, right?
Right.
As you pull that angle head, you start getting that crust that builds on the outside of the blade,
Yes.
the stainless on the side and the carbide on the horizontals. That crust starts building, and that crust is actually what's keeping extra splooge from coming out. So that's when that crust helps you. When it's in the inside of your nail spotter, it's not helping you. 5.5, not helping you. It's not going to affect any other box because the shit has enough space to break off and coagulate. And I've thought, how do you make a nail spotter that doesn't do that? And
Mm,
the answer is you can't.
right.
It's too small of a box. The only thing you can do is what we talked about, just overcompensate by starting off with wetter. I mean, man, if you're doing a basement,
Yeah.
whatever, mix it to whatever you want. We're talking 15,000 board feet, 10,000 board feet, like production taping, like custom production taping. We're not talking about a basement. Down there, do what you need to do. And I'm not taking anything away from basement taping. Basement taping is the hardest taping that you can do. There is no harder type of taping. I don't care what anybody tells you. I've done a lot of shit. You'd be 50 feet in the air and you got to do some beautiful ceiling shit. Nothing is as hard as a basement because you're dealing with amateur hour framing. Every Bob, Dick, and Harry can do a basement, and it's not the truth. The best GCs are the GCs who can do a basement without a hitch and leave you a perfect product because half their job is getting your bullshit ready to just do their job.
Right.
And so I'm not strong-willed enough for that. So I try and stay away from it, but I cut my teeth there. And that Reno jobs, man, that's the hardest taping, no matter what anyone says.
Yeah. Old to new.
Like, and it's hard on so many levels. It's hard on dealing with the clients because they are expecting new construction, especially because the way prices are now.
Yeah.
And it's like, sorry.
Yeah, man. I couldn't imagine handing over a shithole basement and you just ask somebody for 30 or 40 grand. Like
Yeah,
it
the
happens every
one
day
benefit
now.
the basement guys have is if it's like a true eight, you're pretty good because you don't got a lot of light. But if it's anything less than light, like I said, 7.5. For me, 7.5, I'm 6'3". 7.5 is the hardest to tape unless that shit's perfect. And no one's putting resilient on something that's that low to begin with. They didn't put it on because they would have lost that whatever three
Yeah.
quarters, and it wasn't there to be. So it's the hardest. My basement at my house, my own personal house, I'm not happy with it. There's a section that's 7.5, and it drives me nuts. I have a big window that fans in on it. I coated that thing like 10 times. I'm like, this has never happened. I don't because I don't do that shit. I haven't done a
Yeah.
basement in like 8 years.
That's the ceiling down in that room where
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It drives me fucking nuts. There's
Program
nothing I can
something.
do. There's nothing I can do. And I'm not gonna do shit about it. I've just accepted it. Never happened to me in my life,
You
man.
can fresco harmony it.
You know what? I think I can fix it. I think it just needs another 4 coats.
Yeah.
But what that's always the way for me though. It's like I care more about somebody else's fucking that I don't even know than my own place.
Yeah.
As I would leave that shit anywhere else. Honestly, I wouldn't. I would stay as Saturday and make it. Yeah, right.
Man. Using much tomahawks. We didn't talk about that at all.
Oh
Skip
yeah, it's
blades.
Tomahawk Tuesday,
Is it
right?
Tuesday? It might be. When
I man, like wiping tapes from
yeah.
day one, Integra build, man. You were there, you witnessed it. That was the first time those were ever being used for something like that.
Hmm.
I'm still using the same blade on my 10-inch.
Seriously?
The very, very first blade that ever came hot off the press. It's a 10-inch.
Yeah.
You know how they laser engrave
Is it about
10-inch
this
on the
fucking
blade?
yeah.
Well, I'm about a mil away from that fucking label. Like originally they're like a half inch higher than that.
It's gonna
I have wiped so many tapes with this tomahawk blade. 5 fuse always, which
yeah.
is gonna kill stainless. Where I have this perfectly pumped bevel in the 10-inch blades. And when I go in, it's like cheating with skateboarding. You can take your trucks, grind a little hump into the actual truck. So when you hit a rail, you're locked into the rail already.
Oh yeah.
Right. Okay. I shouldn't say cheating. It's guys who
Yeah.
just are
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
skate a lot and then they work. My Tomahawk 10-inch is like that. So when I pull this bastard down the wall, man, it's like pulling a flat box blade down the wall. Nothing gets out because it has this little thing. But yeah, that's all I really use them for. The only other time I would ever use a Tomahawk would be as if I'm spanning a column
Right.
that's bigger than 12 inches. I'll use it all day long. Like my second last post I did in like December
Yep.
on my feed. They're big gnarly columns. I use
But
them for that, but I don't really use them very often just because it goes back to what I said to you about the jig method. If someone can ever really truly wrap their head around that and do a 10,000 board foot job and not touch a hand tool until, if that takes you 10 days, until the seventh day, 70% of the way through, you'll never need to use a skimming blade ever again because you've
right.
already built it up, you've jigged it out, you've planed it out. It all bounces off of the flatness of what you're given and how you lay your tapes, et cetera, et cetera. You pull your tools, it all bounces off of that. So I did, I reposted a level 5 job that I did a year ago to the day yesterday.
Right.
And this was the very first level 5 job I'd ever done completely with a box until the final skim, obviously. Any idiot knows that you can't get rid of tooling marks from a box. But to get it to that point of that final tight onion peel skim
Yeah.
was all box work. And I did it so fast. It was ridiculous. I ended up making more money on the level per day, more money on the level 5 than I did on the actual tape job. And that usually doesn't happen when you're by yourself.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous. It was ridiculous because I'd never done it that way. And so I skimmed that entire thing. I don't know if you saw it on my thing,
Oh
but
yeah.
it was this
We've
one.
talked about it quite a bit on this
It
podcast.
was this thing. It was this job with these recessed lights,
Yeah.
right? And it was because how I crosshatched up and built it all up. But I skimmed that whole fucking guy's house. That was like a 26,000 board foot house
With the
with
books.
10, well, no, final onion
Oh,
skim,
oh,
10-inch hand knife, buddy. The whole motherfucker, because it was already done.
yeah.
It was already left. This is what I'm saying about the jig and consistently pulling over and knowing how to crosshatch and where to fill in. I have always tripled up my butts. I didn't see anyone do it. I just started doing it one day because I was given such shit board. So I was like, why don't I just pull the 12-inch down one more swipe? I'm already here. It's going to take an extra 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Fuck it. And then I never look back. It's a fail safe now for me. I don't give a shit if you're like King Tut of framing and Briar. Well, I'm still going to triple up your butts because I don't have to think about it. And when I go to skim it, it's an onion peel skim. Anyone could skim my butts. You're not doing anything other than just filling in. The knife won't allow you to do anything else. And that's why I was able to level 5 on my final skim an entire guy's house with a 10-inch knife because
Right.
it's just wipe on, wipe off. It's mind numbing shit. The box has already done it.
Right. You're filling in minor whatever.
Yeah. And I stacked, man. Like how I did it was I got my shit 100. I didn't do 2 coats. I did 3 coats and sanded it.
That's
So my shit was 100. And then I just started stacking and I did it all with a 12. I just stacked, but I stayed away from shit that was done. I would stay away from it and I would just stack.
okay. So the first time that you taught me about boxing butts, that stacking method, you literally said, and you can just continue that on forever if
Forever.
that's what you
Yeah.
wanted to
Yeah.
do. And then that's how you fucking did it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just kept going with it. I mean, those guys are good. That job was good.
Yeah.
There was resilient there. Yeah. It was seamless. That was a good job, man. But it was a hard job. Was this time last year? It was a hard job. I did that thing by myself. And then I'm like, Louise, you think you need a guy for the basement? She's like, sure. These dudes came in into the basement like 7 days. I've been there for a month, right? I'm like, oh. Yeah. Good client though. That was a good job. But that's why I don't need a trowel. Like
Hmm.
the whole thing was level 5 with a 10-inch knife. It was ridiculous. Even me, I was laughing at it. I was like, no one's gonna believe me that I did this. I was like, Wes wouldn't believe this shit.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way because it makes no sense. Like, these were big open spaces, like 50 by 50. There's nowhere to hide,
Jesus.
right? And if you asked me to do that on this next house that's coming up, I probably couldn't do it. I was so in the zone. I
Yeah,
was doing house after house after house. I think it's a lot like if you're like a golfer or a mountain biker or a skateboarder or a weightlifter. I was so in that. I was there, man, and beautiful things happen. And it's just
totally.
trying to remember that shit. But that was like a 3 or 4 day process, so intricate. I was in it. I was like living and breathing it because I was so hyped that it's like, oh shit, I've always wanted to do this,
Yeah.
but I've never had the balls or been confident enough or feel good enough what I already had laid down. And yeah, it turned out really nice. Like they were pretty hyped on that.
This this beadwork at the last place, it's like inch and a half flat piece of trim and then the bead. And the trim wasn't there. So I just built a jig and then did the thing, right? That was probably the most intricate beadwork I think I've ever done. And it fucking felt so good doing that. Like, because it was new and like
Yeah.
kind of ass puckery till you figured it out, that kind
Yeah.
of shit.
Yeah.
But you get excited,
Oh,
just
it
like
looks
best
dope.
building,
It
right?
looks dope, man.
Yeah,
As long as people are willing to pay for return shit like that.
totally. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the carpenter would have to do that, and
Yeah.
the carpenter's $100 an hour.
Hmm.
Just because you're doing it out of drywall doesn't mean you're getting a discount.
That's right.
Oh, I remember when returns first came in hot and heavy. We were all dumbasses. We're like, yeah, we'll do it. You do 3 houses and you realize that the returns are just as much work as the fucking rest of the job. And now you're like, oh, you're doing returns?
Yeah.
Okay, so instead of it being 3 grand, it's gonna have to be 5 grand. Or
Yeah.
get someone else to do the returns. Why so much? How much is it going to cost you to jam those,
Yeah.
case them, dap them, wood fill them, wood nail them? I don't know what else they do. Caulk them,
Yeah.
paint them, tape them off. Like, what is this? The taper? Oh, fuck, he'll just do it for free. Fuck it. No.
No.
For first 2 years, it was yes. And then I told everyone it was going to be 500 a return. Didn't matter how big the fucking window was. I didn't give a shit. Well, windows 100 feet, $500. Windows 25 feet, $500. And I did about 3 jobs like that. And then people stopped calling me for window return
I
jobs.
bet. Good.
I'm not going to leave shit. Like if I'm going to do it, I'm going to pull out the square. I'm going to pull out the fucking laser, the level. I'm going to build jigs. So my return's the same on the inside.
Yeah.
It doesn't just look square when you look at it. When you look up at anyone's return that doesn't do that, it's like the ocean. Who are they going to blame, man? There nobody talks about the framer or the fucking boardsmith
No.
at that point. It's the guy who put on the bead. And that's why I don't put on bead anymore. I couldn't even tell you if the last 4 jobs returns have been straight because I literally don't pay attention. It's not none of my concern.
Yeah.
I tape it with fiber fuse and I just start coating it. And by the time my 10-inch box coat gets on it, whether it's crooked or not, it looks straight because people's eyes looking at the edge of the coat, not the apex.
Right.
That's why some of the homies who I tape for like it. Can you get the bead coat on like within the first day or two? Sure, no problem. Because everything goes away. No one looks. It's such a trip, right? Because they'll look at the apex of the bead until you coat it. And then once you coat it straight, it's like, shit, that's so straight. It's like, no, it's not. It's like a candy cane, homie.
Yeah.
Like this shit's like a piece of broccoli over here. You know?
Broccoli. Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's good times, man.
Yeah. And we just like rambled again.
Yeah.
It's fucking is what it is. There's a lot of great value in a lot of those things. For me, it's always been like watching. What I used to do was because there was no like podcast or any shit like that, and you'd have to like mine people's feeds to try and find bits. But what it really boiled down to me for me was I would watch people's movements, like Danny's. I would
Dr.
watch,
Moody.
yeah, I'd watch how his body moved when you because he used to post a lot of auto taper vids. That was his shit. He
Yeah.
was like the king. Well, he fuck still is. But when he was posting those videos, that was the shit, right? And so I watched how his body moved and where his arms were. Asked him a couple questions, gave me a couple pointers. Game changer for me. Same with Thomas TK. I really watched TK a lot. His videos were always super high quality, like high def.
Yeah.
So you could really see, like, well done. You could see what he was doing. And I really watched because Thomas is like a shit brick house, right?
Yeah.
So you can really see how he really his posture and how he gets it up there. And between those two guys, I watched the shit out of them. Worked with Brian for a bit. Brian pointed out a few things like I showed you with the tape drag,
Yep.
and then it was great for me. You know, it's really, I mean, if you can't be beside someone, why not just try and move your body the same way,
Totally.
and ask them a couple questions. Today we were talking about the tape drag thing. I mean, we kind of like, how would you articulate this on a podcast? The tape drag thing, if anything, just try and make sure that when you're pulling horizontal tapes with your auto taper, that the head of the auto taper is approximately, and I mean, I think it's going to depend on how tall you are and how long your arms are. But for me, the taper head is 1.5 feet ahead of where my crotch is, or the center of my body.
Center of your body.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I that angle makes a lot more sense. Like
Brian told me about that shit. Brian told me, I asked him, I said, why are they flying away at the bottom 2 feet? And why am I shit on my starts?
Yeah.
And then Danny, when you get to like Super Saiyan level 4,
I'm so excited.
he's like, I asked him one time, I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm good, but I know I'm gonna be an inch short by the time I get down to the other wall. So he'd tell you, you grab the, so you know how usually the tape just runs through? You have this hand down here for your creaser, this one, you never fucking grab the tape with this. Grab the tape with that, pull the whole fucker back, you pull it all back, and then you start again. I was like, brilliant, so smart, right? Does that make sense to you? So you've started your run, you're like 18 inches down, you're like, shit, I'm gonna be an inch short. Grab the tape, take the whole fucking taper, push it a little bit, and then start running again. The whole thing will just move that little inch. But if you don't grab the tape up, if you don't choke it up,
Yeah.
it won't. The fucking tape will just want to spool more out. Right? Yeah. You can't do it when you're like 4 feet down the wall, right? But if
Yeah.
you're still pretty close, yeah.
No
I
shit.
think he made a video about that actually, or something back in the day.
Well, you were talking about jamming it back in before you take off, like
Yeah, the old Jammaroony. That one was just a fail safe for me.
Yeah.
What I like about that's not about tape drag. The jam it back with the creaser wheel sets it up for when you got to pick the three-way. You've already folded the tape. You know what I'm saying? It's like taking a little 1 inch knife and just, instead of it being kind of like flappy, and then you got to squeeze the mud out.
Yeah.
There's the biggest
Without pulling it.
reason why people need to use a 6 inch for coating their three-ways is
Yeah.
because they don't get enough mud out at the three-way. I'll be guilty of it if I'm moving fast.
Yeah.
But if I have time and I'm not moving fast and the board's really mint, like I said, I squeeze the mud out with my fingers, and then I clean it, coat it with a 2.5 or 3 inch.
Right.
People are building up big, big three-ways because they haven't gotten the mud out of the three-way. The three-way has to be flat.
Yeah.
Framers and drywallers are not that fucking bad, okay?
Yeah.
Or it wouldn't have passed. It's just the way it is, you know? So a big reason why you see people using a 6 inch is because they literally haven't. And all I do is I have a rubber glove. It's like a heavy duty rubber glove, one
Yeah.
of the ones you'd use for fishing. It's
Nice.
waterproof. I literally just, after I'm done like a whole floor, I'll go around with my finger on my stilts and just squish it out with my finger. And I have my 2.5. And that's why if you ever look at my work, you'll never see a big, stupid 6 inch three-way unless Wes was with me or something.
Right. So like your three ways are actually just
Square. They're square to the 3 inch coat. Yeah. If you look close at the pictures.
I have not, but I
Yeah.
suppose I have.
And like I said,
You
like
don't get that box.
I figured that out probably like 3 years ago. Like it
Right.
didn't come right away. I was doing the 6 inch, the 5 inch coat. And again, if you're using something like an assisted flat box or an assisted corner box, you'll never be able to pull that off. You lose control. It's
Yeah.
just the way it is. I'm not going to sit here and say that a product like that is shit or you shouldn't
Yeah.
buy it or anything like that.
No.
There's a place for everything. Those are fantastic to learn how to run a corner box. It's a great novice tool. There's veterans who have been doing it 20 years longer than me that probably run it great. But again, it's just physics. You don't have as much control over the box. Do you have a 7 inch box?
No, 8.
7 is the best size, man. You don't need a fucking 8 inch box. That extra mud, what is the extra mud doing? It's nothing. You fill the fucking box when there's that bullshit left. The 7 inch box, you use it all out and you have complete control over what you're doing. Especially you're a shit brick house. You have forearm muscle and you would be a beast. You could probably get tight enough with it where you could like flip it around because you have so much control up there.
Right.
Where again, with me, it's all leverage, even when I'm picking those things out. And when I say pick out, I mean cleaning them out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not like Flesher guy. Although 25-year flusher guys, I've seen some of those guys clean out three ways,
Bro.
not for the gram, like
Yeah.
consistently. I've
Yeah.
literally witnessed a guy do it, and I'm like, okay, one guy in a hotel. I was like, okay, how long did that take you to learn? Like 30 years? No, I don't have that kind of time. I'll just use an ankle head.
Yeah. Yeah. Fill it in.
The other beauty with an angle head, especially when we're doing the one we were saying, for me, I like to run the corner tapes, the verticals first,
Mhm.
roll and flush them because that leaves me a 3 inch or 2.5 inch, 3 inch coat. And I use that as my marker, my point of reference to know where to cut my horizontal angle tapes. It's like
Yeah.
taking a pencil and drawing a 3 inch mark off of the three-way, and that's where you
Right.
have to cut the tape to overcompensate for what you're going to get, right?
I've always liked doing them separately because I think there's too much shit going on in the
You end up having to push out too much mud, right? From the three-way, you're going to bury it. But the thing about that method is if you're not using a flusher and something that a flusher can't do the same, is you're able to wipe those two sides of the three-way. So not the horizontal angle sides of the three-way, but the actual vertical side of the three-way. Because what you do is you set the tape, then you roll it, right? And then you use your angle head. And the way you flush the tape with an angle head, like a vertical, is you start in the middle, right? You push it down or whatever. Fucking start in the middle, push it up. I like to start in the middle, push it down. Or no, I'm sorry. Start in the middle, push it up. Then I flip my head around and I push the angle. So now I'm 4 inches below the ceiling. I set my angle head again after I've already pulled up to there.
Mhm.
Set my angle head again and I push it up. And what that does is it squeezes all the mud out of that fucking tape. Right. And then you flush it down, you clean that one up, pull the auto taper back up, hit your horizontals, right? Roll them and flush them. And then when you go back with your knife to finally clean it out, because you do. Well,
Yeah.
obviously, there's something you need to fucking do after you tape it. Not after you run the corner box coat, though. You leave. We
Yeah.
run our corner box coats and we go home. We don't come back and there's nothing to clean. But with that one, when you are up there to clean out your three ways after you've taped them, you're just having to wipe two sides because the angle had already wiped those two sides. You can't do that with a flush.
Right.
You can only push that bastard in so much. A flusher, the world is your oyster. It's like homie said, you don't put any pressure on it.
Yeah. Use
Well,
paint.
can be a bit of a problem, right? Because what if the thing's not straight? And now you put no pressure on something that's not straight. So that means that you're going to set it not straight. An angle head and a roller and an auto taper literally have the capability of straightening out fucked up drywall. It's a jig. It pulls down the jig. It's like how I can run a flat box perfectly straight. I'm creating a jig because I have control to hold the nut on the top bevel. And now is a true jig. I use that as my jig. I'm just freehanding a jig.
Yeah.
The same thing goes with your corners. They're all jigs, man. I've been saying it for years. The odd homie, I know you get it. The odd homie will get it, and then it's like having to kind of relearn a bunch of shit because it's really you're literally looking at it in a different perspective. It's more intimate with the tools. You're really focusing. You're really looking at what the tools are doing and learning how to apply pressure to the housing of the tool differently than you're applying pressure to the actual thing. And then you can really use it as if it was a knife,
Yeah.
right? Um,
That's
but
very interesting. That's something I'm gonna
it takes time.
like,
It takes time. And I mean, when you're confident, with your stuff and you can run all of the tools, you just start trying to, I mean, I tried to do that. And it's fun, man. You're giving yourself a raise. At the
yeah.
end of the day, every day you don't have to pick up a hand tool, you're giving yourself a fucking raise. You're having more time with your family or whatever to build your empire even bigger. Whatever floats your boat, man.
Yeah.
Feed the Cardinals,
Yeah, totally.
you know, hit some curbs, whatever, you know. Yeah.
That's a good place to fucking wrap it up.
Wrap it up, man. Wrap it up. I love it.
Okay, so where can people find you to
I'm starting work tomorrow, man. My plan, I like to, before we wrap it up, I'll say it's always really good to take some time offline.
Mhm.
Whether you like to deactivate your account for a bit or just not go, just delete the phone off your app. It's very refreshing to do that. Um, Not just Instagram, anything. Could be the fucking Google, or say you're into like, what are those games the kids play? Crash Royale or
Oh yeah.
Boom Beach or whatever those things are, right? And take time for yourself, friends. So at the end of the day, it's only drywall. All it is it's a vehicle to help you have like somewhat freedom in your career, so you don't have to wake up every day worried that some asshole can call you and give you a pink slip, or you don't go home on Friday night thinking that shit, did I send that email right? Or oh no, is John gonna misread the did I did I did I do that RFQ properly? You never have to worry about that in drywall.
Hmm.
That's the beauty about it. It's this freedom, and I think that's why people are willing to get dusty and dirty and just kind of be like not looked down upon, but like marginalized and kind of prejudged. I'm willing to do that because I know that the freedom that it gives me. You know, I like it because I like it because it's one of those jobs where no one really knows what the fuck I'm doing, so no one can really tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And the second they try to tell me what to do, if it's not valid, if it's valid, I'm more than willing to do it. But if it's invalid, then I just tell them to do it.
Yeah.
Although I'm changing my ways, but it's just one of those jobs, where it's like there's a right, the only consistent thing about it is the ending. Everyone's ending has to somewhat be consistent, but how you get from point A to point B is it's the world's your oyster. And the homies who don't try different things are the guys. Listen, at the end of the day, people. If you cannot use hand tools, you use hand tools the least amount. You are literally gaining years of your life. You're like literally to the point where you're going to make more money quicker. You're going to get more efficient faster, which means you can retire or create more balance in your life. Like I think I'm always going to take. I don't know. There's just something about it that draws me back because I feel confident in it and I'm good at it. And like I said to you, we all like to do things we're good at, and there's not many things I'm this good at. And so I like that about it. And so I'm not like trying to get better at it by any means. You pick up little things here and there, but I'm happy with where I'm at, and it's a good living. It's a good living. If I was a young person, I'd just join the fucking union, though. There's too many snakes out there right now. You call Christy, say, I
Yeah.
want to join the union, and she'll sort you out. That's where you should start. Don't think you're going to learn these gnarly tools. Learn how to be a businessman,
Yes.
especially if you have a baby face. Try and get your money. Doesn't matter how big you are, how tough or strong or whatever you think you are, man. Anyone would be more than willing to take a punch to the head for 20 G's, because the second you lay a hand on somebody, you're not getting your fucking money.
Yeah. Period.
You want to come and punch me for 20K, tape a house out for me? Let's go.
Yeah.
Right? Do it. They want you to do that. So, I mean, the union's a great place. It's scary times right now out there in the world with the way interest rates are going. None of you fuckers are going to get a house anytime soon. So, you might as well, you know, dig your fucking ankles in the ground and just figure out something, learn a trade. The robots aren't going to take over drywall in our lifetime.
Never. Yeah.
They will, just not in our lifetime. I saw this one skim with a skimming blade.
I saw that too. And he does
I was like, okay, fuck me.
yeah.
Okay, now we're getting a bit closer because that asshole can jump through the window when the fucking guy doesn't leave the key. Shit, that was always mine. Well, what happens when the guy's not there to open the gate? Well, here comes Robobot
Yeah.
paper with his fucking Columbia's all over that shit too. It's like, I don't know. We'll give you shit if you just use our blades for your robots. We'll just give you them here. Fuck, market. And then there's the Ninja Bot, right? And then it has like a Tomahawk attachment. And I'll be like, that's like fucking Mega Man. I'm like fucking Professor Dr. Wiley on Mega Man now. Here we go, baby.
It'll be Tomahawk Man. I mean, eventually you are going to have to make tools for the robots. Somebody's going to have to do that.
It's CFS. It's just a fucking Mark V with a AI chip.
Yeah.
No, no, they're gonna get rid of drywall. Like you look at anything on Halo, we're talking about Halo.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Fucking series or Star Wars. All that. And what a fucking haven't worked in 2 months. I forget what the shit's called now. Dibon, ACM. Everything's gonna be fucking some form of ACM
Yeah.
where it's like super easy to manufacture. It's a cheap product and you're getting something consistent. It's cleanable and wipeable and paintable and all the
Yeah.
shit that drywall does until that day happens, and that day will come. Um, we're fine.
Yeah.
And they got to stop using wood because ACM and wood don't work, or any kind of millwork thing has to be, it has to be on something perfect. And
Yeah.
that's why drywall works, because everything that we work on in Canada, anyways, is not perfect. It never is and never will be. Doesn't matter if it's fucking steel or wood. It's impossible. Kelly screws.
Yeah.
A Kelly screw over a bulkhead that's fucking 30 feet is going to throw you out 1/8 of an inch over 30 feet. I don't understand why guys still don't understand that.
Yeah.
You try and talk to like a GC on a fucking commercial site. He's wondering why his beads are all hooked, and you're trying to explain to him, well, the Kelly screws behind the fucking board, man.
Yeah.
They didn't knock it back. What do you want me to say? I don't put this shit on. I just tape it. Oh, I don't know what you mean. What do you mean you don't know what I mean?
Yeah.
These guys with their fucking lasers. Do you think the people who built the pyramids had a fucking laser, man? They had a plumb bob and a straight edge.
Yeah.
That's all you need, man.
It was the aliens, Brad.
Oh well,
Okay.
Jesus.
No, for sure about Plum Bob.
Right? Plumb bob and a straight edge is all you need. Take your laser and shove it up your fucking ass. Unless you're using it for, unless you're using that thing for steel framing,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
or unless you're using that thing to run down a no coat, the blue line,
Hmm.
get that thing out of here.
Yeah.
Get that thing out of here. Especially on trim techs. Are you fucking kidding me? You see these guys put on the apex of trim techs? What do you think happens to light when it hits vinyl? It dissipates the light.
Also, it spreads way out.
Fuck yeah. If you ever want to use a laser, here I am like gaslighting people.
Nice.
Sorry.
Yeah.
If you ever want to use a laser with trim techs, what you do is you put it on the end of the mud lag.
Yeah.
Who gives a fuck about the apex, especially with jumbo bead? Another tip of the day with trim techs: glue and staples is the best way for sure.
100%.
Glue and staples is the hardest way though,
Hmm.
because trim text is like memory foam. Uh, we're talking a 90 profile, right? Trim text 90 profile is like memory foam. If you set that on the ground, it will perfectly straighten itself out.
Right. Because
Okay.
it's made.
Steel won't. Steel will just do whatever it's want. The same thing with the wall. If you set a piece of trim text up on the wall and you staple it without pushing or pulling, you just let it be in its natural shape, it will set perfectly straight. Steel won't do that. Steel will bend and move. Trim text, though, and that's why trim text with staples is a lot easier than trim text with glue. Trim text with glue will pull it in like a candy cane and you can blow it. But once you figure that out, it took me a few years to figure this out. And I think a lot of people struggle with this, and that's
Yeah.
why they veer away from trim text. But you got to just let the trim text do what you want to do. I always double check with a 6 foot straight edge.
Yep.
I don't give a shit if it's level. I didn't build the building, man. I'm going to make it as level as I can, but I want it to be straight.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry. Yeah, we'll end it there, I guess. Just chop it into two, and we do this one in April, May, June,
No,
July.
you're not copping out. 4 times a year is fine. All
Nice.
right, everybody. Man of the people. Brad Hanna.
Yeah. April, May, June, July.
July.
April, May, June, July. Yeah. Cool.
Be humble. Treat everyone the same and do your fucking job.